Because it's Adam and Eve. Eve is, the propaganda goes right the way back. The Bible is one of the worst books ever, for me, from my point of view. Because unfortunately, we're still sort of sprogs. We're still those sprogs. We're not grown up. We haven't grown up. We still, we're not even beyond the baby stage in our existence. Human beings are so fucked, basically. Basically, they're fucked, and they have been, and they're not doing anything about it, and they'll continue to be fucked because they're so stupid. Really, that's the thing about humanity, is it's so deeply, deeply stupid. You look at Gaza, you look at what's happening there, you look at the appalling thing that's happening there, and they'll sort it out, but it's never going to go away because of belief systems which don't serve. They don't serve equanimity, Muslim, Jew. It's all about this notion of God, that the idea that there's a God that takes care of us all. There's no such thing. It doesn't happen. That's not what it's about. It's about us, and we don't examine ourselves nearly enough. We don't look at who we are. We're always looking outside of ourselves instead of looking inside ourselves. And of course, the great thing about my job is that's what you have to do. You have to look inside yourself.
I was going to say, I think we live with fiction all around us, and for thousands of years now, we've told ourselves stories and believed stories. And,
yeah, exactly.
And it was, the God of the gaps is the kind of theory I prescribe to, which is when people didn't know what wind was, of course it's a God. When people don't know what thunder is, of course it's a God. And then all of the God of the gaps. I think religion has been used where there was no understanding.
Well, that's when we don't understand. We blame it on some outside force, And we just realize that it's a force which is beyond our understanding, and we just have to accept it. And then perhaps we should start to understand ourselves, and we don't. We simply don't begin to understand ourselves. Not when we have these belief systems that lead us into all kinds of horror, And we've seen it. We've lived through it. We've lived through the pogroms of the Jews in Russia. We've lived through the Holocaust. We're living through what's happening now in Palestine. We're living through what's happening in Ukraine, and it's again and again the same faults and the same things are being repeated time and time again because we're stuck in belief systems which do not serve. And they do not serve because it's some kind of ideology that is never realized in a way.
Do you think we're ever going to get to a place where we're not fighting each other over narratives?
No, because I think, unfortunately, we're not intelligent enough to realize it. We don't really. There are, of course, we've had the movements of, the embracing of certain things which have a basis in Indian culture, Buddhism, all the isms that so-called liberate us, but they're just isms. They're not actually about who we are. They're about who we could be or who we think we might be or what we may be possible of. But we don't deal with our own confusion. We tend to put our confusion out there instead of saying, what is it we're confused? That's why I do what I do. That's what acting is about. Acting is about understanding the human dilemma, understanding how all these systems ultimately fail you. And there might be one thing that gets you through, that keeps you sane, because the other thing is that we're all kind of dealing with, and certainly I've lived with it in my time with my dear old poor Ma, is the nature of insanity, the nature of how we go mad and how it's easy to go mad. But if you really examine who we are and think about who we are and consider who we are and consider who you are, mainly who you are, you don't go mad. And that's what's so great about my job. That's what my job does. And it's what Shakespeare says. He calls it holding the mirror up to nature, that we reflect things back to the rest of humanity. That's why the theatre, of all the churches, the theatre to me is the one true church, because it's the church of humanity. It's people dealing with all those things that we're dealing with every day and all those false gods that we create for ourselves. And the notion of the word God anyway is it's a conceit. It's a terrible conceit that we don't really acknowledge, in the way that it should be acknowledged. And I understand it. I understand what, how you make how you reassure children at a very early age about everything's going to be all right, and then you lead to stories of certain things. But it's not helpful.
Do you think that religion holds us back?
Oh, considerably, yes. I think religion does hold us back because it's belief systems which are outside ourselves. They're not dealing with who we are. We're dealing, well, if God says this and God does that, and you go, well, what is God? We've created that idea of God, and we've created it as a control issue. And it's also a patriarchal issue.
Which is exactly where it started, right?
Yeah, and that's how it started, and it's essentially patriarchal. We haven't given enough scope to the matriarchy, and I think we need to move matriarchally. We have to go more towards a matriarchy because the mothering thing is the thing which is the real conditioning of our lives. Our fathers don't condition ourselves; they're too bloody selfish, but our mothers have to. Because they have an umbilical, that's what the umbilical cord is about. They have, even though it's cut away, there's an umbilical relationship to your child. And the women have that. Men do not have that. They're just sperm banks, movable sperm banks to walk around and come and go, oh yeah, well, actually, I'll go with that for a bit. And then you move on. Women don't do that.
How do we get to a more patriarchal society?
Well, we do because we have to honor them. And we have to give them their place. And we're resistant to that. Because it's Adam and Eve. Eve is, the propaganda goes right the way back. The Bible is one of the worst books ever, for me, from my point of view, because it starts with the idea that Adam's rib, that out of Adam's rib this woman was created, and they'll believe it, because they're stupid enough.
I guess people need it. People need to feel like that there's
they
something
need it,
outside
but
of themselves.
They don't need to be told lies.
I agree.
I
agree.
They need some kind of truth, and that is not the truth. It is not the truth. It's a mythology. It's not really to do with what women understand more than anybody.
Ricky Gervais has that thing he says where it's, you believe in your God. I just believe in one fewer God than you. Out of the thousands of gods that have existed in over the millennia, I believe in one fewer God than you do. And I take comfort in that, thinking, if only we could all get to that kind of higher. I believe it sounds conceited. I believe it's a high level of thinking to do away with religion. I do.
I don't think it's so high. I think it's a level of understanding. I think
higher than killing somebody.
Well, it's higher than killing somebody, and killing somebody in this needless pursuit of some kind of thing which doesn't serve us at all. And the cruelest thing are these children, the children that were slaughtered by Hamas. And then the more children that it's well into the late thousands, probably we've gone beyond 5,000 kids now that we've been, and the unborn life, in these hospitals. Really, it's unbelievable that we do this, and we stop for a week. Oh yes, so stop for a week and let's negotiate and get the hostages out. Even Hamas are going, well, it's all gone a bit too far now, isn't it? People are so stupid. They are so stupid. And they cannot see the writing on the wall,